Hi everyone, I'm Aideen and welcome to Playful Pathways. Today I want to talk about something that anyone who's cared for children has had to deal with: tantrums. Now, these are most common in the toddler years, but they can still happen even to older children if they're really overstimulated or emotionally overwhelmed by something. So I'm going to explain a bit about what a tantrum is, how to deal with them in the moment, and how to work towards preventing them in the future. A tantrum usually begins when a child is feeling emotionally triggered or overwhelmed. So this could be by anger or fear or frustration or disappointment or even hunger or tiredness. Until the age of 2, children don't have the ability to control or regulate their emotions. The part of the brain that can do this is the same part that controls language and logic and loves learning, and it's only just beginning to develop and be wired up in the toddler years. So when emotions become too powerful, this logical part of the brain can easily go offline, and the child can become totally overwhelmed by all these big, unruly, and uncontained feelings. This is a tantrum. When this happens, you aren't dealing with a rational and communicative human being. You're actually dealing with a completely dysregulated and emotionally overloaded animal. The part of their brain that can really think about what they're doing or saying or understand what you're saying just isn't available to them. So there's not much consciousness or planning. That's why they might be on the floor, kicking or screaming or doing all sorts of illogical things over what you think is just the smallest of provocations. Now, the tricky part about being an adult dealing with a child in this state is that it can be really emotionally triggering for us too. When your child is having a tantrum and they've completely lost control of their emotions, it's really difficult for you to stay in control of your emotions. And then we've got two dysregulated people clashing with each other. This can easily lead to a downward spiral where a parent starts shouting things like, "Stop that right now," which your child's illogical, emotional brain can interpret as threatening. This can then trigger those fight, flight, freeze, or fall asleep responses, which means that your child might end up punching or kicking or running away or even hiding under things. Now, obviously, once it gets to this point, it is so much harder for everyone to calm down, re-regulate, and return to their reasonable human selves. So how do we avoid this worst case scenario? So my first piece of advice is that when you see a child starting to lose control, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you've got a really firm grip on your rational, logical human brain. The very act of acknowledging that you can feel yourself slipping is often enough, but if it's not, by all means, take a few breaths or step away from the situation for a few minutes if you need to. Because it's only by first helping yourself to stay calm and regulated that you'll have any chance of helping them to re-regulate. The next thing you're going to do is try to make an emotional connection with your child, but be careful that you're not being too big or too loud in your approach. You want to get down low to your child's level or lower and get slow and quiet as you try and make this connection with them. Now, making this emotional connection with them doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be making a physical connection with them yet. Your child may not be ready for you to be sitting so close to them or touching them at this point. So if they tell you with their body or with their words that they want some space, then give them that. If your child is kicking or hitting at this point, it's really important that you set the boundary that this is not okay. I am not for hitting, but if you can, offer a redirect to something that is acceptable. So you might say, "I can see that you're so angry you want to hit something, but I am not for hitting. If you need to, you can hit that cushion over there." After this, empathize and help them to feel loved and understood. If you know the gist of what's triggered the tantrum, then you can help them to understand it themselves by talking about what you've seen and heard. You might say something like, "I can see that you're really disappointed right now because you had wanted your sandwich cut into squares, but I cut it into triangles, and that made you feel really cross because I didn't do it the way that you wanted me to." Give them the words that they don't have in that moment to understand and express what it is that they're feeling. It's a bit of a practice skill, but if you can get the hang of it, it's really worth it because it's often that feeling of being overwhelmed by feelings that we don't understand or not having others understand us that can lead to a tantrum. So connect with your child using a few empathetic words, but not too many. Try to get close to them if you can and mirror your body to theirs. So that means copy what they're doing with their body. Even if they can't understand what you're saying, remember the language part of their brains may not be functioning very well at this point, they'll still be able to see that you're trying to understand them. You're physically trying to see the world from their perspective. You can give your child a hug if they'll let you, and once they start to find words and use them again, repeat them or reflect them back to them so that they understand you're really listening. Once they're beginning to calm down and return to themselves, then you can begin to talk more and try to build a picture of what actually happened. It's really common that after a period of dysregulation, children actually don't remember what's happened because the logical part of the brain is the same part of the brain that stores short-term memory, and that is usually out of action in a tantrum. A great way to begin this process of understanding, especially with toddlers, is to tell the story of what happened. You can start off the story by saying what you saw. So I was making a sandwich and I thought I would make it into triangles because that's what you had wanted yesterday. But I didn't ask you if you wanted squares or triangles. I just presumed it would be triangles. But then you saw your sandwich and actually you had wanted squares today, but I didn't know that. And this made you really cross and disappointed. After this, make sure that you leave space for your child to contribute their experiences or to correct your guesses about what they're feeling or about what triggered the tantrum in the first place. This conversation doesn't have to last long, just a couple of minutes might do the trick. Without these kinds of debriefs, it's really easy for your child to walk away with a bit of an emotional hangover because they've just been through this deluge of feelings and they can't make sense of them or understand why they arose. You can help your child to put the whole scenario into a logical order in their brain, which will help them to stay in control and learn from the experience. Once they've done this, once they understand what happened, then you can talk about behavior and consequences if they're applicable. Now, I've mostly been talking about young children here, but really this can happen to any of us at any age. If your child hasn't slept well or eaten well, or if there's been a lot of change or they've been really overstimulated, then they might be more easily triggered. The more we support children during their early development, the better. We need to give them the words to understand their thoughts, feelings and experiences so that they can stay in control and re-regulate more easily. Hopefully, after some time, you will get to the point where you can sense when you're approaching a danger zone and you can get in there with a few quick empathetic words and a hug, and it will all be over before it starts. There was a lot to take in there and I hope you found it useful. If you'd like to know a bit more about the brain and why it is that toddlers have tantrums, then have a look at the other video on this subject. Or if you'd like to download my guide to remembering these points, then head to my Patreon page where patrons can download this and other resources. Finally, if you like my videos, then please press subscribe and have a look at the others on my channel. Thanks for watching and hopefully I will see you soon. Bye.